Thank you very much, Katie. Our next speaker is going to talk to us about sci-fi. Please welcome up Thor.
So this pops up in my Facebook stream. It's a 6-year-old boy who identifies as a girl. And she goes to this Colorado school which supports her and using the girls' restroom as a transgendered person. But on Facebook, it's a pitched battle between those that think it's compassion and those that think it's criminal. I think this is a problem, right? We're faced with these interesting, new kinds of situations, and our response is to judge it. Right, and this is happening more and more on our activity streams because we have no time, so we use these shortcuts to decide what's right, what to think. Okay, we're obsessed with being right at a time when things are changing around us. Even our gender, the nature of gender is changing. And so my solution, my prescription, is that we should spend less time trying to be right and a lot more time being wrong in interesting ways. Science fiction writers get this. Neil Stephenson puts his hero in Snow Crash as a pizza delivery guy with samurai swords and a race car, and he happens to have designed the metaverse. So he's being wrong in interesting ways to get us to see things differently. This is world building. This is the practice of creating fully realized worlds, things like Tolkien did with Middle-earth, and wow, these lights are bright. And we're really good at this, right? We're really good at inhabiting multiple worlds at the same time. When we're reading books, when we're watching shows, we're inhabiting multiple worlds. Writers build worlds in service of story. The rest of us use story in the service of our worlds. So we can use these things. How? Well, world building is great at allowing us to understand systems. Asimov showed how 3 simple rules could be the basis for complex human-robot relationships. And he showed us that the most important law is the law of unintended consequences. World building can also help us radicalize our imagination. Buckminster Fuller imagined Spaceship Earth, and he redesigned transportation and housing systems for that world. World building is also critical for helping us, as Philip K. Dick explained, to escape the tyranny of our conventional narratives. Our own imaginary worlds might be wrong, but at least we don't take them too seriously. So why is this important? Well, up until about 600 BC, people count on their own lives being pretty similar to their grandparents' lives. And then more recently, every generation or so reset their own worldviews. But these days, we find ourselves under pressure to consider new models for our own world. Oh, well, you recognize this. Oh, Ray. Ray deals with this with lots of curved lines, but I think there's something missing here, and that is the z-axis, what I call the axis of weird. If we look at that same chart with the axis of weird, we see interference patterns, where the collision of the old and the new and the rational and the irrational and humans and machines. So it seems to me that our future is got to be weird because our present is weird. So in Battlestar Galactica, good example. We've got Cylons and we've got faster-than-light travel, but they haven't cured cancer or nearsightedness. This seems like a crazy thing until you realize it's actually a reasonable, unintended consequence of a military-industrial complex. It's reasonable to say we've got badass ships and bad healthcare. So, last November, novel writing month, my son, Quinn, age 11, decided to write a science fiction story. And it brings me back to my own days of writers' workshops where I was told to write what I know. And I have to say, bullshit. When you write what you don't know, you have to figure shit out and make shit up. I think that's actually a pretty important thing. And so for him, he found himself having to figure out why his spaceship was going to lose contact with Earth. And so he pretty soon was doing research on satellite communications, and that led him to solar flares and how they affect electrical systems. World building became a learning accelerant. So for those of us in business, we can use full stack world building, which is all about redesigning systems from the bottom all the way up. So Uber, represented by the worm here, is a great example of doing that. They're redesigning the transportation system from the bottom up. At the other end of the spectrum is design fiction, right, which is about taking a single product concept, fully rendered, that allows us to suspend disbelief and imagine implications of new ideas. So this is a squat toilet that uses plants to separate out the waste. Pretty cool. Then we can use role-playing games like Microscope, which uses 3x5 cards, to get people to collaborate on new worlds and alternative histories. And so you start with a beginning, middle, and end, and you take turns zeroing in on the ideas behind them. So what do we know about the future? It gets weirder. But we're going to be lost if we keep fighting the same old pitched battles. So let's get good at being wrong in interesting ways. Thank you.